The call came on the first Saturday in December, while I was elbow-deep in gingerbread dough. If you'd walked into my kitchen right then, you would have thought I was the happiest woman in New England. The radio was playing Bing Crosby. The tree, still bare but already smelling like Christmas, stood by the living room window. The counter space, all 4 precious feet of it, was covered in cooling racks and mixing bowls. And me? I was standing at the marble slab my husband Tom installed in 1989, rolling gingerbread like my life depended on it. The marble has a tiny burn mark in the corner. You can't see it unless you're looking for it. We made it together, Tom and I, that mark. The year the turkey drippings overflowed and the oven flared up and I panicked and dropped the hot pan right there, on his newly set slab. He pretended to be horrified. Then he laughed and said, "Now it's not just a stone. It's a story." That was Tom. Always more interested in stories than perfection. The phone rang just as I was cutting out another batch of stars. I wiped my hands on my apron. The red one that says "Kiss the Cook"? She's Scottish. Tom's idea of a romantic anniversary gift. And picked up the receiver with my floury fingers. "Hello." "Hey, Mom." "Claire." "My only child." I smiled automatically, the way you do when muscle memory kicks in before your brain catches up. "Hi, sweetheart. You caught me in the middle of the gingerbread invasion. You saving room for cookies this year?" She gave a quick laugh. "Bright. Thin. A little too bright." "About that. Actually, that's what I was calling about." I don't know why, but the way she said actually made the back of my neck tingle. "Oh." I shifted the phone to my shoulder and picked up the rolling pin again. More from habit than intention. "Yeah." I could hear her inhale. "We've decided to keep things really simple this year. Just the 4 of us. Low stress, you know? The kids have been sick, Mark's working crazy hours. We just need a quiet Christmas at home." There it was. The moment. It landed in my chest like a dropped dish. I was still rolling the dough, the pin moving back and forth in steady strokes as if my arms hadn't heard the words yet. Flour hung in the air like slow-motion snow. The radio, as if personally offended, chose that exact moment to slide into "I'll be home for Christmas." Of course. I stared at the dough under my hands. It had gone too thin in the middle, the way pastry does when you forget to watch it. "Oh," I said. My voice sounded small even to me. "Of course, honey. I understand. You're the best," Claire rushed on, sounding relieved. "I knew you'd get it. We'll FaceTime for sure. Maybe we can swing by the week after or something. I've just been so overwhelmed, you know?" She didn't wait to see if I did know. "That sounds nice," I lied because mothers lie like that. "Okay, I've got to run. Lily's got a dress rehearsal. Love you." The call ended with a little electronic click. No soft clatter of a handset returning to a cradle the way there used to be. Just a dead line and my reflection staring back in the dark window over the sink. I stood there, phone in hand, rolling the same piece of dough thinner and thinner until it tore under the pin. A ragged hole in the middle. Fitting. I put the receiver back in its cradle and looked around my kitchen as if someone had rearranged it when I wasn't looking. On the island, rows of gingerbread stars already cooling, each one pricked gently with a fork so they baked flat and crisp. 6 dozen shortbread rounds waiting to be dipped in chocolate. 4 pans of cranberry orange scones ready for the oven. 3 tins of peppermint bark hardening, dusted with crushed candy canes. Every tin had a post-it stuck to the lid in my careful handwriting. Claire and Mark. Lily. Ben. Love, Nana. I had even made rosemary crackers because Mark once said offhand, "These are better than anything in Whole Foods," and I'd stored that away like treasure. The labels stared up at me now like little flags planted in someone else's country. I left everything where it was, turned off the oven, and backed out of the kitchen as though I might disturb something fragile if I breathed too hard that night. I sat in Tom's old leather chair by the front window, the one that still smells faintly of pipe tobacco and that cheap cologne he wore every day of our 37-year marriage. I didn't turn on the tree lights. The tree stood in the corner, just a dark triangle against the glass, waiting. Outside, the cul-de-sac was already sparkling, the Jenkins blow-up snowman listing to one side, the Wong's tasteful white icicles, the O'Leary Santa on a motorcycle. My house was the only one in shadow. I pulled the Afghan tighter around my shoulders and listened to the house breathe. After Tom died, I used to mistake the old wood creaks for footsteps. I'd jerk my head up, heart pounding, Sure, I'd see him come around the corner wiping his hands on a dish towel. I know the difference now. But that night, sitting alone in the chair he'd claimed as his, I felt something inside me shift. Not heartbreak. That I understood. Heartbreak is hot and messy. It wails. It gets sticky on your cheeks and your pillowcases. This was different, colder, cleaner. A thin, sharp line being drawn somewhere I hadn't known a line could go. Relief. The thought shocked me so much I almost laughed out loud. Relief? How could I feel relieved when my only daughter had essentially said, "We're having Christmas. Just not with you?" But that's exactly what it was. Underneath the sting and the ache and the sudden hollow quiet, there was a small steady voice whispering, "You don't have to perform this year. You don't have to wake up at 4 a.m. to wrestle a 20-pound turkey into the oven. You don't have to pretend your back doesn't hurt when you bend to pull the roasting pan out. You don't have to smile through being talked over at your own table. You don't have to watch them scroll their phones while your potatoes go cold. You can just not." The next morning, I woke up before the sun as always. 72 years of habit doesn't evaporate because of one phone call. For once, I didn't immediately swing my legs over the side of the bed. I lay there listening. The radiator hissed. The wind brushed against the old windows. Somewhere downstairs, the fridge motor kicked on with a low grind. No footsteps on the stairs. No whisper of a child trying to sneak a peek at presents. No Tom humming off-key in the kitchen. Just me in a bed that suddenly felt much too big. Finally, I threw back the covers and shuffled into my slippers. If there's one thing widowhood teaches you, it's to keep moving even when you don't know what you're moving toward. In the kitchen, yesterday's gingerbread baking trays waited on the island, untouched. A dusting of flour had settled on everything overnight like pale sand over fossils. I made coffee. Strong. Tom taught me to drink it black when we were 22 and too broke for cream. While it dripped, I pulled one of the gingerbread stars from the nearest rack and took a bite. Perfect. Crisp edges, soft center, just the right kick of molasses. I had made these exact cookies every December since 1978. The first year in this house, I didn't know how to use the oven. I burned 3 batches before Tom came home from the hardware store, opened a window, and taught me how to adjust the dial that stuck just shy of 350. Recipes never tell you about temperamental ovens, he'd said, amused. You've got to get to know her like a person. I got to know this oven, this house, this street, every grocery clerk, every mailman. And somewhere along the way, I stopped really knowing my own daughter. I took my coffee to the little table by the window and sat there, bare feet cold against the linoleum, watching the pale winter sunlight slowly crawl across the neighbor's lawn. We bought this house when I was 25 and newly pregnant, on Tom's salary from the auto plant and my part-time paycheck from the library. Back then, the blue paint was fresh, the shutters straight, the lilac bush in front no more than a stick with ambitions. We scraped and saved for every piece of furniture, including this table. Tom used to say, "We're not rich, Mags, but our home is paid in stories," and every scratch and dent agreed with him. Claire grew up in that richness. Paperback books stacked on every flat surface, spaghetti with Jared sauce but a candle lit anyway, hands always ready to hold her when she skinned her knees or failed a math test. And when she left for college, I cried into Tom's t-shirt for a week, and then threw myself into care packages and weekend visits and making her favorite lasagna every time she came home. When she brought Mark home for the first time, all firm handshake and expensive shoes, I made roast beef and Yorkshire pudding and worried if the tablecloth looked too old lady. He called me Margaret that first night. Everyone else calls me Mags or Maggie or Mrs. Campbell. Nobody calls me Margaret except my gynecologist and the bank. "Thank you for having us, Margaret," he'd said, glancing around at the wood paneling, the framed school pictures, the calendar with the local funeral home's logo. "Mom is fine," I'd replied, with an easy smile that cost far more than it looked. He never took the hint. 14 years later, he still hasn't. I thought about their house out in the new subdivision. The beige colonial Claire sends me photos of every time they update something. Granite countertops. Stainless fridge with a tablet in the door. Gray sectional sofa. Gray walls. Gray rug. "It's just so calming," she always says. "It looks like a magazine. Feels like a hotel." When they bought it, they didn't have the down payment they needed. "Mom," Claire had said on the phone, voice sweet, coaxing, "it's such a good school district for the kids. And the yard is perfect for a swing set." We just need a little help getting in the door. We'll pay you back, of course. I didn't hesitate. I didn't even ask Tom's photo on the mantle for advice. I transferred $30,000 from my retirement account that afternoon. We're investing in togetherness, I told myself. 6 years later, my investment had paid out in 3-hour visits on holidays and an increasing sense that I was an add-on, not an ingredient. I finished my coffee and, against my better judgment, opened my laptop. I hadn't logged into my online banking in months. Claire had set it up on my phone once, all fast fingers and barely explained icons. "Don't worry, Mom. I've got it," she'd said, adding herself to my joint savings account, "so I can take care of things when you're older." I told myself it was practical, responsible, the right thing to do. The screen flickered on after a painfully slow minute, and there it was, my account summary. Checking enough. Savings, more than enough. Joint savings with Claire, $112,437. My eyebrows shot up. I clicked on it. A list of automatic payments unfurled like the world's most boring Christmas scroll. Donovan Mortgage Supplement, $850/month. Lily Orthocare, $312/month. Ben Lacrosse Academy, $189/month. Family Wireless Plan, $240/month. Streaming Bundle, $82/month. Miscellaneous. Reimbursement transfers to Claire, variable. All marching down the page, neatly scheduled, neatly withdrawn, quietly draining. I scrolled further back. Years of it. It wasn't that I'm stingy. I'm not. I grew up poor. I know what a bag of groceries can mean when you have nothing left in your pantry but hope. But this wasn't a bag of groceries. This was a second life. Theirs, grafted onto mine, humming along like a separate electrical system I wasn't consulted about. I stared at the numbers until they blurred and turned into something else entirely. Not dollar signs. Boundaries. Or rather, the lack of them. I picked up the phone again. Not to call Claire. To call the bank. After 3 rings, a cheerful female voice answered. "Good morning, and thank you for calling Bayfield Mutual. This is Jessica. How may I assist you today?" "Hello, Jessica. My name is Margaret Campbell." My voice sounded formal even to me. "I'd like to make some changes to my accounts." "Absolutely, Mrs. Campbell. I'll just need to verify some information." We went through the routine. Date of birth, mother's maiden name, last 4 digits of my social. Pass my own pop quiz. "What can I do for you today?" she asked. I took a breath. I'd like to remove my daughter, Claire Donovan, from every account that has my name on it. Effective immediately. And I want to cancel every recurring payment that isn't directly tied to my address. Utilities only. There was a pause. I imagined her glancing at the account, at the years of transactions. Are you sure, ma'am?" "Yes," I said. "I'm sure." I heard soft clicking. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my teeth. "Okay," she said finally, her tone gentler. "I've removed Claire as an authorized party on your savings account. And I've suspended all linked automatic payments that are not associated with your home address. Some of these may already be in progress for this month, but they'll stop going forward." "Good," I replied. "And I'd like to revoke any power of attorney documents on file that list her as agent." More clicking. "You do have a POA document uploaded here. I can flag it as revoked, but you'll need to sign updated paperwork in person to finalize it." "I'll come in Monday," I said. "First thing." She hesitated. "If I may, Mrs. Campbell, do you have support? Family, I mean." I almost laughed. "I have neighbors. That'll do for now." "All right," she said softly. "Everything on my end is updated. Is there anything else I can do for you today?" "Yes," I said. "Please change my online password." "To what, ma'am?" I closed my eyes for a moment and saw Tom kneeling in the gravel of the rest stop off Route 7. His hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped the ring. August 14, 1971. 081471, I said. As she repeated the numbers back to me, something inside my chest uncoiled. I hung up and sat there staring at the dark screen. The house, the little blue Cape Cod with the creaky third stair and the lilac bush and the too small kitchen, seemed to exhale with me. Tom used to say, "Mag's money is just permission slips." You keep giving them. You're inviting people to a party they don't even know they're attending. I kept inviting and inviting and inviting. This year, for the first time, I'd rescinded the invitation. The rest of that week slid into its familiar December rhythm. Cold mornings, gray afternoons, early dark. But something underneath had changed. I didn't say yes to every church committee errand. I didn't volunteer to just whip up 3 dozen brownies for the PTA bake sale, even though I haven't had a child in school since Bill Clinton's first term. I didn't automatically offer to watch Mrs. Henderson's cat for the entire week of New Year's because her son doesn't like fur. Instead, I took all that yes and turned it sideways. The gingerbread stars, all 200 of them, sat in neat rows on my counter for 2 days after Claire's call, untouched. Every time I walked into the kitchen, my chest squeezed. They had been made in love for people who wouldn't come. On Wednesday morning, I made a decision. I pulled out my old tins, the round ones with dented sides and faded snowmen, and started packing them. 2 layers of gingerbread in each, separated by wax paper. When I'd filled 6 tins, I put on my coat and boots, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and carried them out to the car. The air bit at my cheeks sharp and clean. My first stop was the fire station on Maple Street. Tom used to bring the guys their leftover chili sometimes after a snowstorm, just because he said, men who run into burning buildings deserve seconds. The big bay door was open. One of the engines was parked half in, half out, and a cluster of firefighters in navy shirts stood around it, talking. I hesitated at the entrance. A tall man with graying hair noticed me and stepped forward. Ma'am? Can I help you? Suddenly I felt ridiculous. Old woman with tins trying not to cry in public. Great. I baked too much, I blurted. Gingerbread. My family isn't, well, they're not coming for Christmas this year. And I can't eat this much sugar without going into a coma. So I wondered if you'd like some. For a heartbeat, nobody said anything. Then the tall man smiled. Are you kidding? He said. Ma'am, that's the best offer I've had all week. I'm Captain Harris. You just became our favorite neighbor. He took the tins from my arms like they were something precious. The other firefighters gathered, curious. Real gingerbread? One of them asked, popping a lid. The smell puffed out like a warm exhale. Yes, I said. Real butter too. None of that margarine. A young man with a tattoo peeking from under his sleeve bit into a star and closed his eyes. Oh my God, he mumbled. I just met Jesus in a cookie. They laughed and I found myself laughing too. What's your name, ma'am? The captain asked. Margaret. They call me Mags. Well, Mags, he said. You are officially adopted by Engine 3. Anytime you're lonely, you come by. We'll make coffee. You bring the gingerbread. I drove away lighter. My next stop was the women's shelter downtown. Tom and I had donated money every Christmas in honor of his sister, who left an ugly marriage with nothing but a suitcase and a toddler in 1982. I'd never actually been inside. The lobby was cramped but clean, decorated with paper snowflakes obviously cut by small hands. A woman at the front desk looked up as I approached. A toddler balanced on her hip. Hi, I said. I brought some, well. I brought cookies. Her face softened. Oh, that's lovely. The moms and kids would really appreciate that. Come on, I'll put them in the kitchen. As we walked down the hallway, a little girl of about 7 appeared, her hair in uneven braids. She eyed the tins in my hands like a cat watching a can of tuna. Are those for us? She asked. If your mom says so, I said. What's your name? Jayla, she said proudly. What's yours? Margaret. But you can call me Nana if you want. That's what my grandkids used to call me. She wrinkled her nose. Used to. Long story, I said. Short answer, they got busy. I got cookies. She giggled. My mom gets sad and forgets to eat, she confided. But she never forgets to give me food. Maybe I can give her one of those. I nearly broke in half. You can give her 2, I said. And tell her Nana Margaret said they don't count as calories in December. She grinned wide enough to show the gap where her front tooth was missing. By the time I left, 3 more kids had shyly approached to ask if they could maybe, and I handed out gingerbread like communion. At the senior center, where I usually only go on Tuesdays for bridge, Mrs. Ramirez grabbed my hand. I knew you'd come through, Max, she said. Those store cookies taste like cardboard, but yours? Yours tastes like my mother's kitchen. Mr. Kowalski, 91 and still sharper than most 30-year-olds, kissed my knuckles and said, "An angel in a red apron. Who needs mistletoe?" I rolled my eyes but felt myself blush like I was 16. The peppermint bark went to the pediatric oncology ward. I felt hesitant walking into that hospital corridor, with its bright murals and quieter undercurrent of fear. A nurse in cheerful penguin scrubs took the tin from me with both hands. "Homemade?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Real chocolate. No shortcuts." She laughed. "The parents will love you. The kids too if they're allowed." In one of the playrooms, a teenage boy sat in a recliner, a knit cap pulled low over his bald head, fur line trailing from his arm. He eyed the tin as the nurse opened it. "Whoa," he said. "That smells like Christmas," threw up in a good way. The nurse rolled her eyes. "Language, Ethan." He grinned at me. "Can I have one, ma'am?" I nodded. "Take two. The second is for the version of you that isn't stuck here." He took a bite inside. "Okay, that's the first thing I've tasted in a month that doesn't taste like hospital." When I went back to my car, the winter air sliced through my coat, but my chest felt warm, almost too warm. I had spent years pouring sugar and time and money into people who had stopped tasting it. And in one day, I'd found half a dozen places where the smallest sweetness felt like a miracle. Christmas crept closer. I didn't decorate the tree. The boxes of ornaments stayed in the basement, their labels, glass, kids' crafts, angels, staring up at the wooden beams. For the first time since the Nixon administration, my tree was nothing but a shape and a strand of light. I thought it would bother me. It didn't. The bare branches, lit softly by the single loop of white bulbs I'd wrapped around them, felt honest. No pretending. No look at how festive we are. Please don't look too closely at how tense we are. Just a tree. Just me. On the 23rd, I opened the hall drawer where I keep all the Christmas cards. Usually by then it's overflowing. This year there were 3.1 from the dentist, "Keep your smile bright this holiday." 1 from the church, "Unto us a child is born." And 1 from my cousin in Florida, who still writes long updates about her cats. Nothing from Claire. I told myself there was still time. Mail gets delayed. People get busy. But it wasn't about the postmark. It was about intention. I put the cards on the mantel and stepped back. The empty space where Claire's card usually sat seemed to glow. By Christmas Eve morning, the ache of it had dulled into something I could carry without dropping. I roasted a small Cornish hen instead of a turkey. I mashed potatoes with the skins on, the way Tom preferred, leaving the butter and salt unapologetically heavy-handed. I opened the bottle of champagne I'd bought 2 years ago, for Lily's graduation party, and never used because Claire decided to have it catered at a venue with a no outside food policy. I set one place at the dining table. Just one. Plate, knife, fork, cloth napkin folded into a little standing triangle. I put the good china down. I lit the candles Claire always scolded me for. "Mom, you know open flames make me nervous," she'd say, moving them farther from the centerpiece. Tom used to wink at me and blow one out when she wasn't looking. That night, I lit both and left them blazing. At 8:17 p.m., my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen. Claire. I let it ring. After the 4th ring, it went to voicemail. A minute later, another call. Then another. Then a text. "Claire. Mom. Tried calling. Everything okay?" I put the phone face down and refilled my glass. By 9 p.m. there was a knock at the door. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. For a wild, stupid moment I thought maybe it's carolers. We haven't had carolers on this street since 1984, but the brain is a funny thing when it wants something. The knock came again. Hesitant at first, then firmer. I stood up, walked to the entryway and peeked through the sidelight window. There they were. Claire in her expensive winter coat. Hair perfect even in the wind. Mark in one of his gray half-zip sweaters. Hands shoved into his pockets. Lily, all long limbs and eyeliner. Ben, taller than I remember, looking miserable in a puffy jacket. Claire clutched a foil-covered casserole dish. Lily held a bouquet of poinsettias. Mark balanced a cardboard pastry box with a bakery logo on the side. My first reaction was not joy. It was irritation. Not at them exactly, but at myself for the way my heart leapt like a dog who hears the treat bag. Claire knocked again, then pressed her thumb to the bell for a full second. The chime rang out in the small house, louder than usual. I knew if I opened that door, I'd let more than cold air in. I'd let an apology wrapped in convenience. I'd let in a new story they could tell later. We tried. She wouldn't open the door. We don't know what else we could have done. They had not invited me to their table. But now suddenly, with the money stopped and the calls unanswered, here they were at mine. I stepped back out of sight. My heart pounded hard enough that I felt it in my ears. Maybe she's asleep, I heard Lily say through the door. At 8:30? Mark muttered. Your mother doesn't sleep before midnight. Ever. Maybe she's at church? Claire offered. No cars in the driveway, Mark replied. Mom, he called louder. It's us. The phrase twisted something in me. It's us. As if that word still meant what it used to. They stood there for another minute or two. I could see the questions on their faces. Worry, yes, but also annoyance. Confusion. That how dare the sun not rise when I want it to look. Eventually Claire sighed. Maybe she's with friends, she said, sounding unconvinced. We'll leave this and I'll call her in the morning. They set the poinsettias and the foil dish on the doormat. I watched as they walked back to the SUV, the red of the brake lights washing over their faces when the engine started. The car pulled away. My chest hurt. I waited 5 full minutes just in case they'd forgotten something and come back. They didn't. Only then did I open the door that I picked up the poinsettias and carried them in. 4 in total, each with a little plastic foil wrapper crinkling around the pot. We were worried, Claire's note said. We brought dinner leftovers if you're hungry. Love you. There was no dinner under the foil, just store-bought spiral ham and cold roasted vegetables. I put the poinsettias on the kitchen counter, and without letting myself think about it too much, dropped the Starbucks gift card tucked under the foil into the trash. Then I went back to the dining table, still set for one, and raised my glass toward Tom's empty chair. To the first Christmas where nobody had to pretend, I said quietly. I meant them. I meant me. Christmas morning dawned gray and quiet. No shrieking. No crumple of wrapping paper. No clatter of dishes. I slept until 9:30 a.m. I couldn't remember the last time in my adult life that I'd done that on December 25th. I made blueberry pancakes because I felt like blueberries, not because they were anyone's favorite tradition. I put butter on them and real maple syrup, not the sugar-free kind Claire brings. Around 11 there was a knock at the door again. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened it, already prepared to see Claire standing there, round 2. Instead, I found Rosa Alvarez from across the street. She's maybe 40 with tired eyes and the kind of softness that doesn't come from food, but from carrying other people's weight too long. Her 3 kids clustered around her knees like puppies. The oldest, Manuel, is 8. Carla is 5. The baby, Sophia, is 2 and insists on calling me Nanny. No matter how many times I tell her it's Nana. Rosa held a covered plate. Buenos dias, Miss Margaret, she said, cheeks pink from the wind. The kids wanted to bring you tamales. We made too many. The 5-year-old piped up. I helped stir, she reported solemnly. And I didn't even lick the spoon until Mama said I could. I laughed, a real belly laugh I felt all the way down. I'd be honored to share your extra tamales, I said. Come in. It's cold out there. They hesitated on the mat, boots dripping. We don't want to bother you, Rosa said. We were just. You're not bothering me, I cut in. If you leave, I'll have to eat all my pancakes by myself, and that sounds tragic. They came in, stamping snow from their shoes. Within 10 minutes, my tiny dining room had been transformed. Sophia sat in Tom's old chair, her little legs bouncing under the table. Manuel claimed the seat where Claire always used to sit, and asked me questions about the model train on the sideboard. Carla plopped down next to me and announced that she likes jelly on her pancakes, and ketchup on everything else. Rosa kept apologizing for the mess, for the noise, for taking up space. Stop saying sorry, I told her, pouring more coffee. If you weren't here, I'd just be listening to the refrigerator hum. As we ate tamales and pancakes, a surprisingly delightful combination, Rosa told me about her husband's shift at the hospital, about her mother in El Salvador who still sends homemade tortillas when she can, about how she worries that the kids don't have enough. They have you, I said. That's more than most. At some point, the kids migrated to the living room, drawn by the siren song of the old Christmas movies on TV. Rudolph was on, then Frosty, then one of those claymation specials that make everyone look like they're made of chewed gum. Sophia fell asleep on the couch clutching Tom's plaid blanket. Carla dozed off cross-legged on the rug. Manuel sat on the floor with his back against my chair, quietly humming along to the songs. Rosa and I sat at the table with fresh cups of coffee. "You don't have family coming?" she asked finally, not unkindly. "Just curious." "They decided to keep things simple this year," I said. "Just the four of them." "Ah," she said softly. "Simple." Her eyes said she understood all the things I hadn't put words to. "You don't have to be alone if you don't want to be," she told me. "Our door is always open. And I think my kids have decided your couch is theirs now." I laughed again, but there were tears behind it. "I forgot," I admitted, "that I could be wanted." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You are," she said. I cried then. Ugly, embarrassing, snotty tears. The kind I would never let myself cry in front of Claire because she'd go stiff and tell me I was being dramatic. Rosa handed me a napkin and pretended to be very interested in stirring her coffee while I pulled myself back together. When they left that afternoon, my house felt warmer. Not because of the thermostat. Because of the echoes. The good kind. Claire came by on January 3rd. I knew she would. Somewhere between the canceled automatic payments and my refusing to answer her calls on Christmas Eve, I had shifted from mom to problem that must be solved. I was in the back room, sorting through yarn for a blanket I'd started 3 years ago and never finished, when I heard the crunch of tires in the driveway. Then the car door. Then footsteps on the porch. Then the knock. Not hesitant this time. Firm. 3 short raps. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked to the front door. Through the glass I saw her, my daughter, no longer in her stylish wool coat but in a sweatshirt and leggings, hair pulled back in a haphazard ponytail like it used to be when she was 16 and late for school. There was a crease between her eyebrows. She looked like my girl again for a moment. Not the woman who edits her life for Instagram, but the teenager who once sobbed over a failed driving test into my lap. I opened the door. "Hi, Mom," she said. "Hi, Claire." For the first time I could remember, I didn't step aside immediately. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Are you here to talk?" I replied. "Or to fix?" Her cheeks flushed. "I both," she admitted. "Please." I stepped back. She came in, looked around my living room as if expecting to see the ghost of Christmas mess. "Tree's gone," she said lamely. "I took it down on the 26th, I said. "It did its job." She sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands twisting in her lap. I took Tom's chair. We faced each other like two people meeting for the first time. "I'm sorry," she blurted. "I'm so sorry, Mom." "For what?" I asked. "Be specific." She blinked. For not inviting you. For all of it. For taking you for granted." Her eyes filled. She swiped at them angrily. I thought you'd always just be there. You've always just been there." "You're right," I said. "I have been." She flinched a little. "I didn't realize," she said quietly. "Until we were sitting at the table on Christmas Eve with just the 4 plates and the kids kept asking when Nana was coming and I had to say you weren't. I didn't realize how much of our Christmas is you." "Was you?" "Was," I repeated. She winced again. I let the silence sit between us. It fidgeted more than either of us did. "And then," she went on, "when I checked the account and the payments were gone, I called the bank and they said you'd been in touch and that I wasn't on anything anymore and I just..." She looked up, eyes wet. "I panicked," she admitted. "Not because of the money. Yes, a little because of the money. But mostly because I realized that everything I've been assuming, that you'd watch the kids at the drop of a hat, that you'd help with school fees, that you'd cook every holiday, that you just keep giving forever. I realized there was no reason you had to. I just assumed you would. That's what assuming does," I said softly. "It builds a house on someone else's back." She swallowed. "Are you mad at me?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. "And no." She looked confused. "I'm mad," I clarified, "that I taught you how to treat me this way. I'm mad that I never said no, that I never made you ask the real questions, that I never told you it hurt when you pulled away. I'm mad at myself for pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I took a breath. And I'm mad at you, I added, for letting me. For letting it be so easy to take and so rare to give. For talking about me as if I were an obligation instead of a person. For building a guest room you never actually meant for me to sleep in. Her mouth fell open. What? How did you? I saw the exercise bike in there last time, I said. And the boxes. And the golf clubs. Guest rooms aren't storage lockers, sweetheart. They're invitations. She dropped her gaze to her hands. Mark said. She stopped, shook her head. Doesn't matter what he said. It does, I replied. If it affected how you treated me, it matters. She was quiet a long time. Mark thinks, she said slowly, that you're intense, that you have expectations, that if we invite you, you'll take over. I let out a short, sharp laugh. Tell Mark, I said, that he is welcome to learn how to roast a turkey and sew a costume and babysit 3 kids solo and show up with casseroles after someone dies, and then we'll discuss who's intense. She laughed too through her tears. I'm serious, I added. You married a man who calls me by my first name like I'm a stranger. You started repeating his complaints instead of asking me if they were fair. Somewhere in there, you and I stopped being mother and daughter and started being colleagues in a performance. I don't want that, she whispered. I don't. I didn't know how to change it. You start by noticing, I said. You've done that part. That's good. The rest, that's slower. Can we fix it? She asked, a little girl again for a heartbeat. Can we go back to how it was? No, I said. She jerked like I'd slapped her. Claire, I said more gently. I don't want to go back. Back wasn't working. Back was me exhausted and you absent. I want something new. Something that doesn't require me to break myself to feel included. She wiped her cheeks with the sleeves of her sweatshirt. What does new look like? She asked. New, I said. Looks like you calling because you want to talk to me. Not because something needs fixing. New looks like you inviting me to things because you want me there, not because you're afraid of how it will look if you don't. New looks like me deciding when I'm available and when I'm not. I folded my hands in my lap. New looks, I added, like you knocking. And me deciding whether or not to answer. She stared at me for a long moment. Can I start knocking? She asked. Maybe, I said. But you don't get to kick the door in. A wet laugh escaped her. Fair. We sat there a while longer, the quiet between us less sharp now, more like a soft cloth than a blade. Before she left, she stood in the hallway, hand on the doorknob. Mom. Yes. I love you, she said. I've been terrible at showing it. But I do. I know, I replied. I just need you to start doing the loving, not just saying it. She nodded. Can we come for Easter? She asked tentatively. We'll bring the ham. If you make your potato gratin. We'll talk about it, I said. And for the first time in my life as her mother, I meant we'll talk literally. Not as a polite way of saying yes. After she left, I stood on the porch and watched her drive away. The air was cold, but the lilac bush, bare branches against the gray sky, was already dotted with tiny buds. Spring was coming whether anyone invited it or not. I used to call the little bedroom at the back of the house Claire's room, long after she'd moved out. Even when it sat empty for months at a time, the door opened, the bed made, nightstand cleared, it was Claire's room. In my head at least. After that Christmas I started using a different word. The art room. It began with yarn. Rose's kids had fallen in love with the granny square throw I'd made in the 80s. All burnt oranges and avocado greens and browns that looked like somebody spilled coffee on autumn. Can you teach us? Manuel asked one afternoon in February, his hands already reaching for the knitting needles in the basket. Crochet, I corrected. And yes, I can teach you. But I'll need someplace to store tiny half-finished disasters while you learn. So I cleared out Claire's closet. Old prom dresses went to the thrift store. Shoe boxes full of yellowed school papers went into a plastic bin in the basement. The dried corsage from her senior dance, brittle and brown, I pressed into a book of poetry Tom used to read from when he was trying to woo me. In their place I installed shelves. Yarn sorted by color in clear bins. Hooks in a little ceramic jar. Paintbrushes I hadn't touched in years. Canvases Tom once bought me on sale because he'd seen me doodling roses on the backs of envelopes. "You've got more inside you than grocery lists," he'd said, pressing them into my hands. For 30 years I kept telling myself I'd use them. When things slow down. Things never slow down. People think retirement is empty. It isn't. It just fills itself with different things. Church committees, babysitting, extra shifts at the library because you're so good with patrons, organizing potlucks, making phone calls for fundraisers, adding just one more side dish to a menu already groaning. The art supplies waited quietly. Now, with my calendar suddenly filled with less must and more maybe, I pulled them out. On Thursdays, I taught a baking class at the community center. It started with Rosa, then Mrs. Henderson from up the street, then widows from church who didn't want to cook just for one, then a single dad who confessed he'd been feeding his kids frozen waffles for dinner twice a week. We gathered in the too-bright kitchen at the center, under fluorescent lights that hummed faintly, flour dusting our shirts like snow. I showed them how to cut butter into flour with 2 knives if you didn't have a pastry cutter. I taught them Tom's trick of grating frozen butter on the coarse side of the cheese grater, then tossing it gently in with a fork. I demonstrated the difference between soft peaks and stiff and whipped cream, and we laughed when Mr. Patel whipped his arm right out of its socket trying to impress us. Recipes are like suggestions, I told them. The real cooking happens when you listen to the dough, not the paper. On Tuesday afternoons, kids from the neighborhood came to my art room. We painted. We glued buttons onto cardboard. We made snowmen from cotton balls in January, and lopsided hearts in February and construction paper flowers in March. When they left, the room smelled like glue and tempera paint and the high sweet scent of sugar from the cookies I invariably baked just in case. My house, for the first time in a long time, felt like it was expanding instead of shrinking. Rosa started coming by in the evenings sometimes, when the kids were asleep and she needed to talk to someone whose problems didn't start with TikTok. I learned about her childhood, about the way her mother braided her hair so tightly her scalp hurt, about the way she missed the smell of her grandmother's kitchen, masa and coffee and fried plantains. She learned about Tom, about the way he used to leave me love notes on post-it stuck to the back of the sugar jar, about the way he danced like a drunk flamingo at our wedding. "Did you ever think about dating again?" she asked once, tentative. "I did," I said honestly. "I even tried. A man from church asked me to dinner 2 years after Tom died. We went to that Italian place by the highway." "How was it?" she asked. "We both ordered eggplant parm," I said. He spent the entire meal talking about his ex-wife. At the end, he said I reminded him of her, and I realized he meant that as a compliment. Rosa snorted. "I paid for my own meal," I added, and told him not to call. I didn't cry about it. That's how I knew I was over needing someone just to fill a chair. She nodded slowly. "What about you?" I asked. "Would you date again if Carlos and I weren't a thing?" she finished. "Maybe. But whoever it is would have to understand that I'm not a blank page. I'm a book already half written." We clinked our tea mugs together like wine. Easter snuck up on me. It used to be the runner-up holiday, a kind of secondary performance. I'd do glazed ham, scalloped potatoes, deviled eggs, the works. Claire would bring a salad if she remembered. The kids would race around the yard hunting for eggs while Mark hovered, worried they'd get grass stains on their pastel clothes. That year it was something else. Claire texted me in mid-March. "Claire, can we come for Easter? We'll bring ham if you make the potato gratin." I stared at the message for a long time. Old me would have responded in 30 seconds with, "Of course. Can't wait." And then immediately started planning 3 menus and printing out little place cards with everybody's names. This me. Let the phone sit on the table while I finished my tea. Then I replied, "Me. Door opens at 2. Bring your appetites and your listening ears." It took her less than a minute. "Claire. We'll be there. Love you, Mom." On Easter Sunday, I set the table for 7. Me, Claire, Mark, the kids, and Rosa's family. Her kids had never had a big traditional Easter dinner, she told me. Between Carlos's shifts and her budget, it had always been ham sandwiches and potato chips. "That's still Easter," I'd said. "But you're coming here this year. I need backup." She arrived first, carrying a basket of store-bought rolls and a container of rice and beans, just in case your food is too bland. I laughed. "It probably will be. Thank you." We were cutting carrots when Claire's car pulled up. I watched from the kitchen window as they tumbled out. Lily taller, hair dyed a streaky plum now. Ben somehow taller than his father. Mark in a dress shirt instead of a pullover. They walked up the path slowly. The doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I told Rosa, wiping my hands. I opened the door to 3 sets of eyes and one very careful expression. "Hi," I said. "Hi, Mom," Claire replied. She held a foil-covered pan. "Ham. I didn't burn it." "Progress," I said, stepping aside. They came in. Lily's eyes darted around the house, landing on the art supplies, the kids' drawings taped to the hallway wall, the small shoes lined up by the door that weren't hers or her brother's. "You redecorated," she said. "Sort of," I replied. "I started using the house I live in." Ben sniffed appreciatively. "Smells amazing. Did you make that potato thing?" "In the oven now," I said. "With extra cheese. Doctors can yell at me later." Mark carried the ham pan to the kitchen without being asked. He stopped short when he saw Rosa. "Oh," he said, blinking. "Hi. I'm Mark." Rosa wiped her hands on her apron and smiled. "Rosa. From across the street. My kids keep stealing your parking spot with their chalk drawings." He laughed a little self-consciously. "So you're the famous neighbor who makes the good cookies. The kids told us." "I'm more than that," she replied lightly. "But yes, I do make a decent snickerdoodle." The afternoon unfolded slowly. Lily asked if she could help set the table. "Sure," I said. "Plates are in that cabinet. Forks on the left, knives on the right. Spoons go up at the top." She rolled her eyes but did it. Ben hovered near the stove. "Can I mash the potatoes?" he asked. "The old way. With the skins on. Like you used to." Something in my chest unclenched. "Absolutely," I said, handing him the masher. "Put your back into it. These potatoes won't know what hit them." At the table there were awkward pauses. There were glances. There was, once or twice, the ghost of an old script trying to sneak in, Mark almost saying, "Margaret, you really shouldn't go to so much trouble," and Claire almost apologizing for the kids' mess. But then Manuel loudly asked Ben if he likes superheroes, and suddenly there was an intense argument over which movie was best. Lily admired Rose's earrings and confessed she'd always wanted to get a second piercing, but Mom would freak. Claire said, "We can talk about it," and I watched her surprise her own daughter by not shutting it down immediately. Mark, to his credit, asked Rosa about her job at the clinic and listened without checking his phone. After dessert, 3 pies because I am still me, just with better boundaries. Claire helped me clear the table. In the kitchen, elbow deep in sudsy water, she bumped her shoulder against mine. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" I asked. "For giving us another chance. For not locking the door forever." I shrugged. "I locked it long enough to hear myself think," I said. "That was the important part." She took a breath. "We've started looking at our budget," she admitted. "Really looking. It turns out we can live without 3 streaming services and that fancy gym membership." "Imagine that," I said dryly. She smiled. "I'm applying for a promotion at work," she added. "Mark is taking on more of the kid stuff. We're trying to stop assuming you'll always pick up slack we create." "That's a start," I said. "I'm not your safety net, Claire. I'm not your emergency fund. I'm your mother. If you want me in your life, it has to be because you like who I am, not just what I can provide." She put the dish towel down and turned to face me fully. "I do like who you are," she said. "I'm just realizing I only ever knew the part of you that was Mom. Not you. Not Margaret. Not Max. Not the woman who teaches baking classes and apparently has a small army of children who adore her." I looked at her, at the worry and the hope and the leftover teenage girl under the crow's feet. "You can meet her," I said. "If you want. She's got some rules, though." "I can handle rules," she replied. "Apparently I need them." We both laughed. Later, after everyone had gone, Rosa and the kids home to their little blue house, Claire and her family back to their beige colonial, I stood on the porch and breathed in the evening. The lilac bush Tom planted the year Claire was born had exploded into purple. The air smelled like forgiveness and new beginnings and something else I hadn't recognized at first. Self-respect. I tilted my head back and looked at the sky. Stars pricked the dark, cold and distant and beautiful. They didn't care whether anyone invited them. They just shone. I'd spent most of my life trying to be a hearth warm, safe, always there when someone wanted to warm their hands. I hadn't realized I was allowed to be a star too, distant when I needed to be, bright because that's what I am, not because someone else needed the light. That December, two things happened. My only child uninvited me from Christmas, and I finally invited myself back into my own life. Now, when I bake 200 gingerbread stars, I don't stack them according to which grandchild prefers which frosting. I fill tins for the fire station, for the shelter, for the oncology ward, for the neighbors, for Rose's kids, for that teen at the community center whose mother works nights and sleeps through holidays. Every Christmas Eve, I still string a single strand of white lights in my window, not to guide anyone home, just to remind myself, I'm here. I'm enough. The light is mine. And if someone knocks, really knocks with their whole heart and not just out of habit, I might let them in. But I won't be standing behind the door, holding my breath, waiting to be chosen. I'll be in my art room, or at the community center, or across the street with tamales, or on the couch with a child asleep under my blanket. I'll be busy doing what I should have done a long time ago. Living.